Hello, members. Good afternoon, everyone. So, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar organized by Committee of Members in Industry and Business. So, today's topic is audit documentation and external confirmation. The Committee for Members in Industry and Business is one of the non-standing committee of the ICAI, which serve as a bridge cultivating meaningful connection between chartered accountants in industry and business. So, major activities of the committee are campus placement program for newly qualified chartered accountants, overseas campus placement program, women campus placement programs, and ICI awards. So, in the leadership of Vice Chairman Sir CA Rajesh Sharma Sir and Chairman Sir CA Anuj Goel Sir. So, here is the brief. So let me introduce our chairman, sir, CA Anuj Goel, sir. He is a practicing chartered accountant and Central Council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. He has made significant contribution to the profession with his extraordinary tenure of 19 years in the Central Council. He is currently the chairman of the Committee for Members in Industry and Business and Taxation, Audit, Quality Review Board, as well as Deputy Convener of Publication and CDS Directorate. He is self-motivated and hardworking person. His contribution in the field, research and development has always been remarkable. He has conceptualized and introduced various initiatives to the foster the research environment like International Research Award, Research Project Scheme, Doctoral Scholarship Scheme, which has benefited large number of scholars not only in India but globally. So let me introduce CA Rajesh Sharma sir, our Vice Chairman sir of CMINB. He is distinguished chartered accountant in India, recognized for his extensive contribution to the profession. Throughout his tenure with ICI, he has been involved in various committee and initiatives aimed at enhancing the standard and practices of the accountancy profession. So let me ask Chairman Sir to add on the words to the webinar. Over to you, Chairman Sir.
Thank you very much, Neha ji, our honorable moderator of this program on the very important webinar on audit documentation. And we are having very prominent resource persons, Sri Dr. Himanshu Agarwal ji, Sri Anirudh Agarwal ji, and we are having a very dynamic secretary of the committee, Sri Anita Suneja ma'am. And friends, we are very well aware that our committee for members in industry is representing 60% chartered accountants, and we are having very ambitious journey for this year. We are going to have the campus placement program thrice for the newly qualified chartered accountants, and in addition to that, you are very well aware that that we have to see that how we can really do something very concrete for the members in industry who are the brand ambassador of our CA profession. So we have launched a women campus placement program for the women chartered accountants who are at present 45% of the total chartered accountants. And in addition to that, we are having very ambitious CA job portal, which we are going to launch very soon, 365 days, 24/7, for even for the experienced chartered accountants. And we are very well aware that our members who are having the experience are in a great demand, but as we are not having any program in which any platform on which we can have those chartered accountants, so industry is in a very difficult position to have those chartered accountants in their entity. So audit documentation is a very, very important topic. And see Dr. Himanshu Agrawalji and Anirudh Agrawalji are a very, very prominent resource person. And I think in spite of the fact that all of us must be doing our best to ensure the quality, but unless and until we are having the proof, because even for the Pulwama attack when we had um, uh, one second. I have to attend a different meeting. I once again welcome Himanshu Agrawalji and Anirudh Agrawalji, and may I request Neha Bansalji for the further proceedings. Over to C. Neha Bansalji.
Thank you. So I would like to welcome CA Himanshu Agrawal. He is one of the fellow member of ICI and working with SR Bartley Boy and Company. He has rich experience for 15 years in audit companies, especially in manufacturing sector, transportation, automobiles, and infrastructure sector, with functional expertise in Ind AS and IFRS. He is also special invitee to Accounting Standard Board, co-opted trainer in Peer Review Board and Technical Review in Financial Reporting Review Board of ICI. So, sir, can you please give us brief or give us knowledge about audit documentation and external confirmation? And I would like to introduce CA Anirudh Agrawal. He is chartered accountant. He carries various certification from ICI, including business responsibility and sustainable reporting, CSR certification, having exposure across sugar, fertilizers, automobiles spanning over 7 years, serving the field of RERA, environment, social, and governance, among others, closely associated with MSME catering to the renewable sector, authorized various articles in the field of sustainability, finance, and taxation associated with various non-profit and social ventures. So I would like to welcome you both over the topic. So can we start with Mr. Himanshu Agrawal?
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Nehaji, for the introduction. Now I'm audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
you are audible.
Yeah. So first, I would like to thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman of the committee, and the other staff of the committee to giving us an opportunity to deliberate our knowledge on the two very important topic of the on the audit documentation and the external confirmation. So, can we start, Neha, now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we would like to begin by emphasizing a fundamental aspect of the audit process, which is called a audit documentation, as mandated under Standard of Auditing 230. While it's a widely understood that audit documentation is a crucial responsibility for the auditor, serving as a record of the audit procedure performed, audit evidence obtained, and conclusion reached. What is the often overlooked is that this documentation holds significant importance for the auditee as well, because we normally see the audit documentation as a perspective of the auditor only, but the equal importance for the auditee as well, because audit documentation does more than just justify regulatory requirement. It's provide transparency, accountability, and allow the auditee to understand how and why certain audit conclusions were drawn. It gives the auditee an opportunity to review their own internal control, financial process, and operational practice from an external perspective. Furthermore, in case of the future dispute, regulatory reviews, or subsequent audit, the documentation can be act as a reference point for the both the party, auditor as well as the company, or we can say auditee, protecting the integrity of the audit and the supporting the auditee's position as well. So today, let's us explore not only the requirement of the SA 230, but also how proper and through audit documentation become a valuable asset, not just for the auditor to demonstrate compliance, but equally for auditee to promote good governance, compliance, and continuous improvement. So I am presenting one presentation prepared by me, and just Anirudh, kindly let me know if my presentation is visible.
Sure, sir.
It's a visible.
It's visible, but if you can make it full screen, sir.
Actually, I've already done the full screen. Just allow me a minute, please.
Yeah, it's visible now.
No, it's not visible to me even. I think some setting. Now you visible to you?
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Okay. So we have already discussed. This is the topic for the today: compliance with the audit and the external confirmation. And this is the agenda for the day. Why the compliance of the audit is important, audit documentation and external confirmation. If I talk about the audit, so we are doing audit since our articleship. And we all are experienced auditor. But still, we are facing lots of issue while under the preview of the regulator review and all. So that's why we need to know why audit compliance of the audit documentation is important. If you see my screen, this is the Quality Review Board finding for the financial year 2023-24. Quality review set up by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And in the 2023 or 24 reports, they have observed that 23% of the firm were not compliant with the standard of auditing SQC1 and the SA 505, which is the external confirmation, and we will discuss today in the today webinar. So you can see the most non-compliant standard is a SA 505 or SQC1. If I go to the second non-compliant standard, this is the SS 700 issue of the audit opinion. The third one is the SA 230 audit documentation. We will discuss today in webinar. And the fourth one is a SA 315, the risk assessment of the audit. So you can see the audit the regulator not only focusing the observation regarding the auditing standard, company law, they are focusing on the non-compliance of the standard on auditing. So if we discuss how many regulator and in the country, Anirudh, can we discuss how many regulator in the country in the at present?
Sure, sir. So not just the ICI, but also the NFRA, SEBI, and
Yeah, right. So if you can see my screen, the Quality Review Board set up by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. If I talk about the function of the Quality Review Board, so Quality Review Board regulate the auditor of the private limited company, which is not under the preview of the NFRA. NFRA set up by the central government in October 2018 and look over the audit quality of the listed company, also regulate the auditing and the accounting standard, quality of the audit in the country, and regulate the audit professional. IFAIR, this is the international forum, and most of the countries regulatory body part of the IFAIR, and NFRA is also part of the IFAIR. If I talk about the function of IFAIR, they hold annually meeting and discuss the audit issues and the quality issues worldwide, and issues the advisory as a part of their reports. Another two important board, Financial Reporting Review Board by the ICI, Taxation Audit Quality Review Board by the ICI. So these two boards also look the quality of the audit through this board. Financial Reporting Review Board do the review through the technical reviewer for the of the financial statement, and Taxation Audit Quality Review Board for the tax audit. Apart from these board, one board also set up by the institute, which is called a peer review board, and peer review board ensure the quality of the audit survey, audit firms, and it is mandatory for the to conduct the peer review for the category of the firm. If we talk about the recent trend, QRB inspected 33 audit engagement in respect of the 30 audit firm under in the year 2023-4. NFRA inspected audit of the audit quality of the Big Four firm and the other firm. IFIAR surveyed 763 listed PI public interest entity audit file in a 2024. If we talk about the consequence of the non-compliance by the auditor, quality review board, what is the function of the quality review board? Forward cases of the non-compliance to disciplinary committee director of the ICI, issue advisory guidance for undertaking remedial measure of the audit firm, followed up for a compliance check subsequently, recommended matter to the council of the ICI. If we talk about the, so if you see the quality review board, there is no, they are not imposing any penalties and debarment. But if we talk about the NFRA, if they found any non-compliance, the debarment of the audit firm or the partner, imposition of the penalties. If we talk about IFIIR, I've already discussed they hold annually meeting and discuss the board issue. If we talk about the action taken by the QRB for the financial year 23-24, forwarded 5 cases to the DC to the ICI, advisory issued for the 23 cases, and 5 cases were closed without any observation. NFRA, if we I jot down the report of the 2023, 27 cases debarment of the auditor, 1 to 10 years, penalty imposed 1 lakhs to 1 crore to the concerned auditor. Impact of the auditor, loss of the reputation, loss of clientele, increased litigation, change in the audit firm, and extinction rate. If you see, this is the slide for the NFRA observation in the I have taken from the recent report, in which they have mentioned failure on the part of the auditor to comply with a large number of standalone auditing while performing an audit of the listed company. Audit conducted in a casual manner, non-compliance with 16 standard of auditing. The engagement partner was charged with the non-compliance of these 16 standard of auditing. If you see, SA 505 also part of the 16 standard of auditing, and we will discuss during the today's webinar. So you can see the importance of the compliance of the standard of auditing, and NFRA saying this as a part of their. If I talk about the further point highlighted by the NFRA, which is a few points I have taken from the recent report. Working paper were found to be created or alter the date of the audit report, violating audit documentation integrity. Like, they have observed that auditor modified or created audit documentation or working paper after signing of the audit report. No clear documentation showing review of work done by engagement team member, by senior audit team member, or the engagement partner. Like, they have mentioned the audit documentation prepared by the staff or audit team, but there were no evidence which can demonstrate that those work were reviewed by any senior member of the engagement team or the engagement partner. If I talk about the third, the time recorded by the auditor, engagement partner, and the member of the engagement partner is mandatory under para 9 of the SA 230, which require the auditor to record the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure performed in the audit documentation. So this is also related to the observation second, like there were no evidence and the time recording, time sheet maintained for the staff and the engagement partner. And we will discuss this thing during our deliberation. The fourth one is the audit file did not contain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support the audit opinion expressed. Like they have the auditor report was not linked with any the opinion which they have issued for the CARO, for the ICFR, for the main report were not sufficiently documented as a part of the audit. Delay in completion of the audit documentation beyond the 60 days prescribed. SQC1 talk about the assembly of the file. We will discuss in a detail. Use of the boilerplate template that were not tailored to the specific client situation, leading to the inadequate audit document evidence. Like the engagement team have used the standard template but not modify according to the requirement of the client. So they have just used the standard template and not modify according to the requirement. If we talk about the penalties imposed by the NFRA, this is extract from the Cafe Coffee report dated April 26, 23. Imposition of the monetary penalty of INR 1 crore rupees upon the firm. In addition, firm were debarred for the period of 2 years from being as an external or internal auditor. Imposition of a monetary penalty of INR 5 lakh upon signing partner, and he was debarred for the period of the 5 years from the being appointed as an external and the internal audit of the entity. So why we have discussed this regulator, about their observation, about the penalties, because without audit documentation, the audit practice facing this practitioner facing these issues, and also this will impose the integrity of the company's financial statement and their process. Anirudh, can we move forward?
Yeah. Hi, I have a question, Himanshu.
Yeah, please.
So, can you please explain how do the regulators view the quality of audit documentation, and what are the potential consequences for our company if our audit documentation is deemed inadequate?
Okay, so this is related to the question which related to the slide which I already discussed. So regulator perspective on the audit documentation is the regulator expect audit documentation to provide clear evidence that audit was conducted in accordance with the standard of auditing and the generally accepted accounting principle. They also needed the transparency and the accountability. High quality audit documentation should clearly outline the auditor rationale, procedure performed, and conclusion reached. Regulator also look the risk assessment procedure by the auditor or the company, how risk were identified by the auditor, how was the evaluated, and how they have addressed those risks in their audit documentation. Even they look the how the company dealing with those risks which identified by the auditor as in a significant risk. Also, regulator see the while reviewing the company's documentation and the auditor documentation, the timeline. Regulator are very smart. They can evaluate that you have performed audit documentation before the audit concluded or after the audit report date. You can see the observation by the NFRA. They have said that they have mentioned that audit was conducted after the audit report date. So a regulator is very concerned about the timeline. If I talk about the potential consequence of on the auditor or the company, regulatory sanction. If they regulator found audit documentation is adequate, they may impose sanction on the auditing firm, which could include fines, penalty, and restriction on the firm's ability to conduct the audit. We just saw the example of the Cafe Coffee Day. Increase scrutiny. If any audit company or the audit firm come under the scrutiny, so their audit and their files again coming to the coming under the preview of the scrutiny by the regulator. Reputational damage for the company as well as the auditor if their documentation is weak and the observed by the regulator. The legal consequence: inadequate audit documentation can lead to the legal issues, especially if it is found that the company misrepresented the financial position or failed to comply with the regulatory requirement. It is also if the company financial statement not represented true and fair view, so it will lose the confidence of the investor and the
Himanshu, sorry to interrupt. Your slides are not visible.
no, actually I'm giving the answer of the query, not
Okay.
if and also if the documentation is not proper and the financial statement is not representing true and fair view, so maybe regulator will ask to restatement of the financial statement. It will increase the audit cost for the company and the efforts for the auditor also. Also, if we talk about the company's perspective, they will lose damage in respect in the eyes of the customer, supplier, and they will, if their financial statement under the review of the scrutiny, so they will not able to get the new business and will not, if the report is qualified, so will not able to apply for the government tender or the private various tender. So that is the consequence and the audit regulator point of view to look the audit documentation. Can we continue with the slide now?
Yeah, Himanshu, I have one more question. So most of the documents are in soft copy. So how to ensure the documentation instead of hard copy?
Neha, I will give you this answer after just my next slide talk about that. So I will answer
Okay.
after this slide, right? My slide is visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we talk about the legal and professional requirement, Section 143(9) of the Companies Act required the auditor shall comply with the auditing standard. The word shall used by in the Act, it means auditor need to mandatory comply with the auditing standard. Second schedule of the Chartered Accountant 1949 states that a member in practice shall be guilty of professional misconduct if he fail to invite attention to any material departure from the generally accepted procedure of the audit. So member of the institute could be held guilty of professional misconduct if his departure from the generally accepted procedure of the audit. If we talk, where is the written? Where generally accepted audit procedure is written? These are written in the standard of auditing. If we talk about the scope of SA 230, this is essay for the audit documentation. Auditor responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of the financial statement to be adapted to audit of the other historical financial information, like SA 230 apply for the audit of the audit documentation for audit of the financial statement, and auditor could apply those principles while auditing other historical financial information, like if I talk the example of the certificates, limited reviews, tax audit, and other kind of the certification. Specific documentation required of other essay do not limit application of this essay. Like essay 230 talk about the audit documentation. However, other standard of auditing, given the principle of the audit documentation related to the principle of those standard of auditing, so auditor need to comply the documentation requirement of the other standard of auditing as well. Law and regulator may establish additional requirement, like SEBI, ICAI, MCA also issue guideline for the documentation. These are the three definitions given the standard of auditing, and these are very important definition. And if I talk about these definition, are crux of the audit documentation. The first definition is audit documentation. What is the audit documentation? Audit documentation is record of audit procedure performed, including audit planning. If you see the word audit procedure performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusion reached by the auditor, also known as working paper or work paper. So you see the definition audit procedure performed. Also, the audit procedure performed, including the audit planning. So auditor need to document audit planning as well. And while doing the procedure, the evidence obtained by the auditor and conclusion reached while while they are issuing their audit report. So what the audit procedure perform, what the evidence obtained, and what is their opinion. So here is the main, what is the audit procedure perform. Only collecting the audit evidence, like collecting the voucher, collecting the invoice from the company or given by the company, is not audit documentation. The audit procedure performed and and the conclusion of the auditor link with those audit procedure is called as the audit documentation. The second definition is an audit file, one or more folder or other storage media in a physical or electronic form containing record that comprise audit documentation for a specific engagement. Like audit file can be in a physical mode, in any storage media, any Google Drive, and lots of firm using the audit documentation tool or software also while documenting the audit procedure. Neha, can we discuss your question right now? Can you repeat your question?
Yeah. Yeah, I was asking, most of the documents are in soft copy. So how to ensure documentation instead of hard copy?
Yeah. So nowadays, everyone doing the audit in a soft copy, like in the form of the Word, in the Excel, PDF. As you see in the definition as well, if we can document audit soft file through the software, if the firm is using software, but every firm is not using the software. So we can document all the soft file through the different folders in the storage media or on the computer. Like if I'm doing the audit of the ABC Limited for the financial year 24-25, so I can create the folder on my laptop and can open the subfolder, the area wise, the caption wise of the balance sheet or the financial statement, and can save my working paper in the Word, Excel, and the PDF on those folders. So this is not a very, very big task. Even the 99% I can say auditor using the soft documentation nowadays.
So banking sector and online business maintain system documentation, right? So there is no hard copy and there are multiple soft copy documentation. So for verification, so there are so much transactions. So how to handle such transactions?
Yeah. So if you see my first definition also, I mentioned audit procedure performed. Only collecting the document is not an audit documentation. Like if I'm doing an audit of any software company or any big company having 1,000 transactions on daily basis, I cannot collect each and every evidence. If you are talking about the retail company and all, so if audit always we do on the sample basis. So what auditor can do and what the company can support while doing the documentation, the auditor can raise the samples and document the audit procedure in the Word file, in the Excel file, or in the any other paper mode while doing the audit procedure. So there is no need that we see the evidence in a hard copy only. We can see evidence in a soft copy and document our audit procedure, what we have checked. Like if I'm checking the invoice, so like what was the invoice number, what is the date, what is the party name, what was the PO is matching with the invoice, what is the GRN, what is the service sheet number. So we can the auditor or the company can document those attributes in their as a part of their documentation. If I talk about the third definition, it is a very important one. Experience auditor, given in SA 230. An individual, whether internal or external to the firm, having a practical audit experience and reasonable understanding of the audit procedure. Reasonable understanding of audit procedure, standard of auditing and applicable law and regulation requirement, business environment in which the entity operates, and auditing and financial reporting issue relevant to the entity industry. This is the very important definition for the audit documentation and as a part of the regulator also. And we will discuss again this definition while going through the presentation. And I will come back to this definition again. If we talk about the stage of the documentation, there is a 3-stage normally: planning stage, execution stage, conclusion stage. Planning stage, we do the understand of the business, calculation of the materiality, risk assessment. Execution stage, performing the substantive analytical procedure, substantive procedure, test of controls, and audit conclusion, like what the audit procedure performed and evidence we collected. So what is the conclusion of our conclusion, and our conclusion linked to should be linked with our audit report. Here you can see I have added another stage, pre-audit stage. Even this is not given in the standard. Why? Because actually in the Company Act 2013, the auditor appointed for the 5 years. So while accepting any audit by the auditor or selection of the auditor by the company, both should work on the some pre-audit work. Like if I talk about the as a perspective of the auditor, so they need to check the background of the company, need to check the background of the directors, see what was the issue supplier of the company, what is the customer, who are the customer of the company, and what was the opinion issued by the earlier auditor. And these all things should be documented in a audit file, even the clearance from the previous auditor. And if I talk about as a perspective of the company, so company also should see who is the signing partner of who will be the signing partner of the company, what is his experience, which companies he's serving right now. So this stage become very important from the auditor as well as auditee while doing the audit documentation. Why is audit documentation is required? Applicable professional standard, like SA 230 audit documentation says auditor need to perform the audit documentation. The firm policy of the auditor firm policy as required by the SQC1, like that firm need to maintain some policy for the audit documentation. And the applicable legal and regulatory requirement, like we have discussed the Companies Act, also the SEBI and the other regulator also needed audit documentation while performing the audit by the auditor. Audit documentation support our conclusion. Like if I talk about as an auditor, it is evident that the audit performed by the auditor, without audit documentation, no one can prove that audit was conducted by the auditor. Or even the company cannot demonstrate that our auditor performed the audit if the auditor not documenting proper procedures. Why is documentation is important? Internal reviews, like if the audit documentation, after the documentation only the partner manager can be reviewed the audit procedure performed by the team. All and the cold review. Cold review is a third partner review or the third party review as a part of the SQC. Like if you are doing the listed company, so another partner need to engage as a engagement quality reviewer, or also as per the firm policy, their audit files reviewed by their internal department as suggested by the SQC1. Regulator, NFRA, QRB, SEBI, we have discussed about the regulator. They also look the documentation. Professional bodies like ICI, peer review board. During the last 4 or 5 years, the scope of the peer review has been significantly increased. Now, I can say each and every audit firm, most of the audit firm under the preview of the peer review, if you are doing the audit of the listed company, even the certain class of the private limited company, even the bank branch audit. So peer reviewer also see the documentation by the auditor, and audit documentation support you in a litigation, if the any litigation or the arise in the future. So audit documentation will help you to demonstrate your work while litigation in any manner. Documentation is the backbone of an audit. The work that auditor perform, the explanation given to the auditor, the conclusion arrived at, all are evident by the documentation. Inadequate or improper documentation may be considered as a deficiency in performing an audit. We just see the observation by the NFRA, and we will see the few observation by the quality review board also. If the auditor is doing the inadequate or improper documentation, so it will be considered as a deficiency in a performing an audit, and it will be part of the regulator inquiry or the penalties. The auditor may have executed appropriate audit procedure. However, if there is no documentation to prove, it may put question on the work done in case of any material misstatement is reported. This is very important because actually I believe every company is supporting to the auditor and every auditor is doing a good audit. But if they are not documented, so they will not able to prove that they have done the adequate audit procedure, and company will not able to demonstrate in front of the regulator that they have given full support to the auditor and their financial statements were adequately audited by the auditor and represent true and fair view. If we see that, if I take the example, if just 31st March we are closing, and any company, the company need to conduct the physical verification of the inventory, and the auditor need to observe that inventory. If auditor staff or the company staff not documented the physical verification process, so auditor as well as the company will not able to prove that they have count all the inventory at a closing date. So why I'm giving this example? Because actually the auditor done the appropriate work, company supported while doing the audit procedure of the physical verification, but if not documented, no one can prove the physical verification was conducted by the company and the auditor observed that physical verification. Improper and incomplete documentation may put the auditor in difficult situation, such as the action from the various regulators. Nature and purpose of the documentation. What is the nature and the purpose of the documentation? Or this slide is not important. This discussion is not important for the auditor only. This is the perspective of the company as well. Assist the audit team to plan and perform the audit. Enable the audit team to accountable for its work. Like audit documentation. Assist audit team to plan and perform the audit work. And the audit enable audit team to accountable for its work. Like if the audit team is a big audit team and doing the audit of the large listed company having a 50 members. So while doing the proper documentation, they can accountable the staff who perform this work, who perform the review of those work, assist in supervision of the work, and enable quality control review and inspection. Or audit documentation only assist in supervision of the work, like what is the stage of the audit, and the quality control reviews by the external partner or by the regulatory inspection. Support and evidence work done and comply with the standards. While through the documentation, I'm just repeating every time, like support our conclusion and support our work, because this is the main motive of the audit documentation. Like audit documentation support and evident work done and complies with the standard of auditing. Matter of continuing significance are retained for future audit. Like if there are significant few always in a significant matter in the audit, so that matters and their audit procedure and conclusion retained for the future audit. The objective to prepare documentation is that it provides a sufficient and appropriate record of the basis of the audit report, evident that the audit was planned and performed with the standard of auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirement. Here you can see the both word used in the definition, sufficient and appropriate, like quantity as well as the quality. So audit documentation, like the balance between the quality and the quantity as per their materiality and as per the size of the company. Form of the content of the documentation. This is a very important one. Depend on factors such as the size of the complexity of the entity, like documentation for the listed company and for the private limited company and for the partnership firm will be a different depending upon the law and regulation applied on those entities and also the size of the organization. The nature of the audit procedure to be performed. The identify risk of the material misstatement and significance of the audit evidence obtained while performing the planning. Auditor identify the risk of material misstatement as a part of the SA 315, and the documentation should be like that. How the auditor identify the risk of material misstatement, what the procedure performed over those risks, and what kind of the audit evidence obtained while doing those procedures. The need to document a conclusion or the basis of conclusion not readily determinable for the documentation of the work performed or the audit evidence obtained. The audit methodology and the audit tool use. The firm using the audit methodology and the few digital tools and the other tools, that should be a part of the audit documentation as well. Again, form and content of the documentation. This is sufficient. The documentation should be like that sufficient evidence to allow an experienced auditor with no previous connection to the audit engagement to understand. We have discussed the definition of the experienced auditor, and I have told you that I will come again on that. who was the experienced auditor? The person who having a reasonable understanding of the standard of auditing, law and regulation, uh, generally as audit procedure, issue of the industry, and the issue of the entity. So documentation should be like that, that which allow an experienced auditor with no previous connection to the audit engagement to understand audit procedure performed, evidence obtained, significant matter arising during the audit, and conclusion reached, including significant professional judgment made, and who performed and work and when. So the meaning hereby is that the audit documentation is like that. If any external experienced auditor, like technical reviewer of the NFRA, QRB board, peer review board, your other peer group, so audit documentation should be like that. Any experienced auditor with no previous connection with those engagement can understand what procedure you have performed, what significant evidence you obtained, what was the significant matter, and how you mitigate what the procedure you performed, conclusion reached, including the professional judgment applied by the auditor, and who performed the work and when. Again important, this was the observation by the NFRA, like the firm was not maintaining the timesheet record and not mention the person name who performed the audit and who reviewed the audit. So this is very important definition and the very important discussion, because this is the crux. Like, your documentation should be like that. Any technical or experienced auditor can review your audit documentation without any your support. Like, if the NFRA reviewer come to you, so they will not allow to sit with you. They will not sit with you. They will just take your file and they will try to understand what the audit procedure you performed, what is the evidence you have obtained, what was the significant matter during the audit, what is your conclusion, what was your professional judgment, and who performed the work. So your documentation should be like that any experienced auditor can understand those documentation and link with your audit report without taking any support from the auditor.
अभी इसके ऊपर चलेगा ना support.
Himanshu, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So do we have any specific audit document automation software which you can suggest?
Actually, this is the institute webinar, so I cannot suggest any tools and all. There are lots of tools available in the market. So
Okay. So I have one more question. How can we as a company ensure that our documentation process align with the auditor's requirement for audit documentation? And what are the key areas where companies commonly fall short?
Okay. To ensure that your documentation process aligns with the auditor requirement for a company perspective, you are asking. So first, the company need to understand the auditor requirement. Like, what is the requirement of the audit, including the standard applied on the financial statement, IFRS or normal GAAP. And then company need to implement a robust documentation system, like some storage device or secure storage of the document. And if we are just discussing the point of the company, so the company need to engage auditor in an early stage, involve auditor early in the process to gain insight into their expectation and clarify any uncertainty regarding the documentation and their requirement. And also company, even it is a mandatory for the few classes of the company should regularly review their documentation and the financial record through the support of the internal audit. And company also need to develop clear documentation policy, because actually if we talk about the listed company, so they need to complete 3 review. and the one audit and the one tax audit. So 5 audit mandatory by the regulator. So they need to develop their clear policy with their within the organization, like what kind of the documentation they need to maintain to provide the auditor for auditing. The company also conduct the trainings for their staff. And if I talk about the key areas where normally companies commonly fall short, like as in my experience, actually, I'm in audit profession since last 15 years. So while so first of all, inadequate detail. The company provide not the sufficient detail which is required by the auditor. So that's why I have already mentioned to engage the auditor early and understand their requirement. Poor organization like the company provide the not every company. I'm just discussing what is the commonly fall short by the company. Provide the audit files, or they are working in a very poor organized manner, like no sequence is there, any no indexing is there, just providing data to the auditor in a rough manner. Lack of consistency, like every time they are providing data in a different format. So the company should agree the formats and the details with the auditor in advance, and then working on the auditor requirement. Also, companies need to updated law and law requirement, like if there is a change in the Companies Act, there is a change in the income tax, or there is a change in the accounting standard, or new regulation coming. So companies should focus on that while preparing the file for the auditor. So this is the I have experienced many times, like companies not updating their working as per the current requirement. Or the last one is the providing the insufficient evidence to the auditor. Like auditor asks 5 details to perform one audit procedure. So the staff providing detail, the 3 details, 2 detail, or in a piecemeal manner. So then this will impact the audit quality as well as the chance of the error. So the company should care while providing these facts, while providing audit files to the auditor. Can I move further?
Yeah, I have one more question. In what ways can technology assist in streamlining the audit documentation process, both for the auditors and for our internal team?
Okay, so technology is playing very significant role nowadays. Like the company using the accounting software, auditor also using the soft file, which you have already asked in the earlier question, and auditor also using the audit software and the audit tools. So if we talk about like what is the way in which the auditor and auditee can streamline the process. So first, I can suggest the document management system, the centralized storage, which allow all audit related document, making it easy for the both auditor and internal team to access necessary file. Like the auditee can create one centralized storage system and upload all the auditor requirement over there. So can auditor and auditee can look what they have provided, and they can also control the version of the documents. Because actually, if we send if I talk about the big company, like a big telecom company, and having a staff of the more than 100 people in the finance department. So if auditor receive mail from the 100 people, so no one able to control what kind of the information they have received, what is the pending, which was the version they have provided, and lots of confusion between the auditee and auditor. So it is good to be maintain the centralized storage database, real the tool for the real-time collaboration, like we are using the Microsoft Team or the Zoom for connection collaboration between the auditor and the team. Cloud-based shared platform also we can use as a part of the database, and the company can also use the data analysis tools while preparing their financial record and the financial schedule to the auditor. It will help to analyze the big data in a very efficient manner. Also they can use the encrypted communication to avoid any confusion in the future, and they can agree the standard template we discussed in the last question as well. So these will help out to company on better control of the audit documentation by the auditor, and what the data they have asked, what they have provided, what is the pendency. So by leveraging these technology solution, organization can enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the audit documentation process, leading a smoother audit experience for both auditor and internal teams. Can we proceed further? I'm audible? Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So if I talk about the next slide, this is significant matter. Significant matter are matters which are judged through objective analysis of the fact, circumstances to be significant to audit, and include, amongst other, significant risk. As a part of the audit process, auditor need to identify the significant risk as a part of the SS 315 or 330, and significant. Auditor need to identify which matters are amount to the significant risk for the auditor. Result of the audit procedure indicating material misstatement or revision of the assessment of the risk, like while performing of the audit, the auditor come into the conclusion there is a material misstatement in the financial statement, or found some important matter like any new legal case, any new contract, any issue for the going concern. So that need to be look and maybe need a revision of the assessment of the risk. The significant matter also the matter which is significantly difficult. The auditor need to face the difficulty while performing the audit procedure. I can say the example of the stock taking in a few industry. It is not easy to perform the stock count like a oil rigging company and some remote location company. So even if we remember in a while during the COVID pandemic, it was not possible to conduct the physical verification of the inventory. So ICI issued the guideline how to what kind of the audit procedure perform if we are unable to perform the inventory count. So if we are unable, if the inventory is significant and auditor is not able to conduct the physical verification, so that will become the significant matter also, and the count the significant matter that could result in the modification of the audit report or the EUN, or in case of the listed company, the significant matter could be a part of the key audit matter as a part of the requirement of the SA 701. Documentation normally segregated into the two parts, permanent audit file and the current audit file. Even these definition not given in the Standard of Audit 230, but implementation guide issued by the ICAI given these definitions. Or even since articleship we are since study time we are reading these definitions. What is the permanent audit file? Permanent audit file contain those document the use of which is not restricted to the one time period and extend to the subsequent audit also. Like if we have appointed for the audit for the 5 year or 6 year or 10 year, so these file will be useful for the across the appointment period. Includes memorandum of article of association, any important deed, bylaw and regulation in case of the company, firm, cooperative society, engagement letter, communication with the previous auditor, constitution of the client, history and background of the entity, organizational structure, list of director, partner, trustee, banker, lawyers, legal documents such as prospectus and significant lease and the sales agreement, copies of special resolution, significant contract agreement to the boards of minute. If we talk about the current audit file contains those documents relevant for the time period of audit. Some example include engagement letter, annual reappointment letter, fees letter, audit plan, working paper containing information like grouping, audit program, queries raised, and the explanation received, third-party confirmation, correspondence with other auditor and expert, selection of sample, materiality calculation, and management representation letters. Here you can see I have mentioned engagement letter in both the slide. Why I have mentioned? Because actually, if you see the many of NFRA observation, so they have pointed out this. Because in the company there is a appointment for the auditor for the 5 years. So auditor need to sign one master engagement letter for the appointment for the 5 year, and that will become the part of the permanent audit file and any amendment in the master engagement letter. However, each and every year, the auditor need to sign engagement letter or fees letter from the auditor, from the company. NFRA observed also the auditor signed the master engagement letter, but not obtaining the annual engagement letter or a fees letter, which is mandatory. Even your fees has been increased or not, the auditor need to obtain from the company annual fees letter, or company also 100% issued a annual fee, asked from the auditor that please provide us a annual fees letter, irrespective of that the fees has been increased or not. Communication with those charged with the governance and management letter. What to document is a very important one. What to document? The audit procedure applied, objective, procedure, result, and conclusion. Detail of test performed, describing the detail the work performed by the auditor. Identify the person who performed the work and those who reviewed it, including the date when it was performed. You see, I have repeated in each and every slide this, because actually this is a very important as a part of the SA 230, or there are lots of regulator observation by NFRA, by the SFIO, by the QRB. The identification of the person who performed the audit and who reviewed the audit is not part in the documentation. Identify significant matter arising during the audit, we have just discussed. Conclusion reached and basis for that. Source of the amount and other information, from where we collect those information, from the company, from their lawyer, through the external confirmation. The source of the information also need to be part of the documentation. Properly index and the cross-referencing. This looks very theoretical, but it's very important. And I will share my personal experience. Even my file was reviewed as a part of the NFRA. And also they look in their hard file on the soft file, the auditor did the properly indexing or the cross-referencing between the work paper or the audit conclusion or not. So they are taking these kind of the things very, very seriously. Audit procedure performed according to the instruction in the audit book. like ensure all the audit procedure, the company, like as a part of the, if the firm having some audit program, so the audit team ensure all the procedure mentioned in the audit program should be addressed as a part of the working paper. Or if any procedure is not applicable to the on the entity, so that they can just mention not applicable with the reason. What to document? Only the work auditor has actually performed. Even I have just discussed at the starting of the presentation that the regulator are very smart. So we need to take care. We need to document only the work which we have performed. The work which we have not performed, we will not able to demonstrate that in front of the regulator that we have performed those work. So please, only perform those work, document those work which was actually performed by the auditor. Only which is relevant to the audit as per the sample size or as per the requirement. Contain analysis, opinion, conclusion, support the overall audit opinion. Nature of the documentation can be electronic, manual, or other media. Even moderator asked this question earlier also. Example include audit programs maintained by the firm, email with the client. This is a very important one, or I will take 1 minute here. Even in the NFRA, they have observed lots of communication received by the auditor through the email and lots of discussion with the client. But that those emails were not part of the documentation. The auditor should take the printout of these emails or convert into the PDF, and it should be a part it should be a part of the audit documentation. One thing also important here for the company as well as the auditor, because in many NFRA observation, many regulator observation, it observed or it is a very practical also sometimes practical scenario also. The auditor sending email to the client post the audit report date, and the client providing the document on the email after the audit report date. So company as well as the auditor avoid exchange of the email after the date of audit report and keep important email as a part of their audit documentation. Analysis by the auditor, evident of the test of detail on sample of item. Normally we called as a vouching of the invoices or the other document. Letter of the confirmation and representation. The letter of confirmation as a part of the SA 505 we will discuss in some time, and the management representation letter as a part of the SA 580. Abstract of copies of entity record, like abstract of the relevant document, the big document or contract or the minutes of meeting should be a part of the audit documentation. Substantive analytical procedure, including development of expectation and investigation of different, like variance analysis, or substantive analytical procedure like to develop the expectation and compare with the actual result and investigate the difference. So as a analytical substantive audit procedure and the substantive analytical procedure both should be a part of the documentation. What is not documented? What is not documentation? Equally important, entity record. Example, invoice looked in the testing. Entity record is not an audit documentation. I have discussed audit procedure performed and collection of the evidence while performing the audit procedure is audit documentation. So entity record is not a audit documentation. Even Neha asked the question, like in a companies of a retail or a software company, we are just looking the data in the software or not able to collect any entity records. So entity record is not audit documentation. The audit procedure performed is audit documentation. Superseded working paper, like only the final working paper or final financial statement or the final audit report should be a part of the audit document. not the superseded working paper. Note reflect the incomplete or primary thinking, like incomplete note and the primary thinking, previous copies of the document corrected or typographical error, like previous copies of the audit report, the financial statement, like a superseded records. Duplicates of the document should not be a part of the audit documentation. Or if the company or the auditor team is uncertain whether to keep on an audit file as a documentation, ask the field senior manager or the partner. Example where documentation is not required: where the entire standard of auditing is not applicable. Like if the internal, for example, if company does not have an internal audit function, so requirement of the SS10 is not applicable. And the requirement is conditional. Like in case of the modified or the qualified audit opinion, auditor need to comply with the requirement of the SA 705. But if auditor issuing a unmodified opinion, so there is no need to document the requirement of the SA 705. Documentation of small and less entity, generally less extensive. Auditor may record various aspects of audit together in a single document. Like auditor as well as the company prepare the file in a single document, or auditor can do planning in a single document and execute audit in a single document. So we have already discussed the as a part of the form and content in the audit. Audit documentation always depend upon the size and the complexity of the entity. Characteristics of the high quality work paper or high quality document. These are the 5 essential characteristics of the high quality work paper that all document prepared should consider throughout the audit procedure. Completeness. Each work paper should be completely self-standing and the self-explanatory. Like the experienced auditor can understand that work paper without any support. We have discussed. Accuracy. High quality work paper include statement and computation that are accurate and technically correct, like recomputation of the interest, recomputation of the lease calculation as per the IFRS 16, recomputation of the depreciation. So the documentation, the work paper should be accurate, and the computation, the recomputation by the auditor must be technically correct. Organized. We have like logical number of indexing, caption wise, or with then audit file should be like the technically competent person and the experienced auditor, which we can say could understand the purpose, procedure, performance, the result. The file should be organized, relevant and concise. Audit work paper and item including on each work paper should be relevant to meeting the applicable audit objective. Like it should be relevant. The work paper must be relevant for the audit and in a concise manner. Like if the company provide a 1,000-page contract and auditor just put 1,000-page contract in an audit file, no one able to understand, even in case of the loan agreement of the bank. So the auditor can prepare the summary of the main clause like interest rate, repayment term, default term, the documentation requirement by the company for the loan, just example, and that need to be a document, not the complete agreement documentation before summarize the key relevant term will not suffice the purpose. This is the illustrative work paper. This is the Neha, just after this slide. This is illustrative work paper issued by the ICI as a part of the implementation guide of the audit documentation. This work paper issued by Institute in 2009 and NFRA constitute by the central government in 2018. But here you can see in 2009 sample work paper, is the name of the company, nature of the assignment is a statutory audit, tax audit, limited review, at head office or name of the unit, for the period, like which year we are auditing. In a right side, audit firm name, article assistant name, date of the audit, and who reviewed the audit. These were the NFRA and the QRB observation regarding the nature, timing, and extent of the audit. Here you can see the institute already issued the guide in 2009, long 10-year back, before the NAFRA came into the picture, that auditor need to mention audit firm name, article, the staff name, date of audit, and the reviewed person name and date. And if in the bottom side, this is the reconciliation statement of the debtors, the balance as per the balance sheet, as per the general ledger, if there any difference, so what is the reason of the difference noted by the auditor from the management, what is the checking note, what is the observation by the auditor, and what is the conclusion of the auditor. Like, this is the material, there is no difference, there is a difference. If difference is there, it is a material or is an immaterial. If it is a material, so auditor need to qualify the report or not qualify the report, which we are discussing since first slide, or the documentation should be related with the audit report. So here we can see the proper guidance available by the institute. Just we need to focus the requirement. Neha, you were asking something.
Yeah. So Himanshu, these audit work papers are to be submitted to regulators.
Yeah,
Or
if
are
they will,
these
if they will,
or
as a part of the, if the our file in the come in the picture, review picture, so we need to even NFRA, QRB, peer review board, they all reviewed our working paper, SFIO.
and what are the best practices for maintaining audit documentation for future reference? And how long should these documents be retained?
Okay, so I've already discussed, but I will give you emphasis, like there should be an organized structure for maintaining the documentation, like consistent system. Use a standardized filing system that characterize document logically. Example, by name of the client, by the audit year, by the nature of the assignment. Digital organization in some storage media or some software. Comparative documentation ensure that all audit procedure, finding and conclusion are documented in a detail, including supporting evidence. And the 5 characteristics which we just discussed, the work paper should be a complete, accurate, organized, relevant, and concise. And even for the company that or the auditor, the data security, if they are doing documentation in a soft, so data implement the security measure to protect sensitive information of the client. Physical security, if the documentation in a hard file, so physical. So no, everyone cannot access those files. The partner or some senior person can access the file. Train to the staff. If we talk about the retention of the audit file, so SQC1 already defined the requirement of the retention of the audit document, and it is come in the slide also. It is a 7-year from the date of the audit. I've SS 230 in a definition of the SA 230, it's a entirely standard for the audit documentation. However, there are other standards also which talk about the or specific documentation requirement in a different paragraph, like SA 210 in a paragraph 10-12. So every SA having a different audit documentation requirement, and auditor need to follow that. SQC1, the auditor should complete the administration process of the assembling of the final file on a timely basis after the date of the audit report, which is the 60 days given in the SQC1. And we have seen the observation by the NFRA that auditor changes the audit file after the 60 days and regulator pointed in their audit report. Documentation to be preserved for the 7 year. Just asked by the Neha this question. This is the requirement of the SQC one also. The company need to take to maintain financial record 8 year or the 10 year as per the different laws, but auditor need to preserve audit documentation after 7 year, and after 7 year the audit firm can implement some procedure for the dismantle of the those file, and auditor is not bound to provide file to any regulator or any other person after the 7 years. What is the meaning of the assembly file? Like assembly of file within a 60 days, the auditor can changes the administration process which not involve any new audit procedure. Like auditor allowed to do some administration kind of the changes in the file, like deleting or discarding superseded documentation, indexing of the work paper, indexing, sorting, collecting, cross-referencing, signing of the completion checklist. Ownership of the file is with the auditor. The auditor can refuse to give his audit documentation to the client or other person unless it is required by the law, like review by the regulator or by the ICI as a part of the peer review process. These are the few findings of the QRB. Just I will touch in a summarized manner, like auditor not depreciation calculation, physical verification of the inventory, bank reconciliation, bank confirmation, matter arising after the date of the audit report, which is called subsequent event after the audit report, going concern assessment, modification on EOM of the audit report, contingent liability, audit checklist were not part of the documentation, not proper. So these were finding by the quality review board. And one important thing, prepare sufficient appropriate audit document on a timely basis, enhance the quality of audit. You can do the documentation as a while the performing the audit. You cannot prepare audit documentation after the audit, and the regulator will easily catch out those. Even company will not support to the auditor also after the reporting date. So it's a duty of the board to complete all audit procedure before the issue of the opinion date. QRB finding, we have already discussed this, just detail of that. These are the few guidance to the auditor. Practitioner guide to the audit of the small entity, ready reference of the EQCUR, engagement quality standard, implementation guide of the SA 230, MCQ and engagement quality control standard, checklist of the standard of auditing by the WIRC or AASB, or audit working template issued by the AASB, technical guide on the digital assurance. These are the few guidance for the auditor which help them for the reboost audit documentation. If I sum up this audit documentation or conclusion, so what we have learned, like prepare audit documentation in a timely manner, simple working paper, do the indexing, describe the purpose of the review, describe the review of the hierarchy. Documentation save life, documentation in defending disciplinary cases of help support the in support cases, helpful estimation of efforts, like what kind of the time auditor is spending and what kind of the fees. It's better, it's helped to negotiate fees by the company or between the auditor, helpful in a training, and smooth transition to the new team, one-time investment and saving time in a future engagement. If I'm summing up whole audit documentation, my presentation or the discussion, or what not done is documented is not done. You can do you must perform lots of audit documentation, the audit procedure, but if it is not documented, it is considered as not done. So this is the discussion for the audit documentation. And now we will discuss the discussion for the SA 505 external confirmation. Anirudh, can you please take this?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Manshu. A very in-depth and a substantive presentation on documentation. Now, I'd like to take forward, and Dr. Manshu, I'd like your assistance in changing the slide since I don't
Yeah,
have
sure,
the code.
please.
Okay. So if you can change the slide to the next one. Yeah. So as far as the external confirmation is concerned, it's one of the part of the audit evidence and the audit procedures, because we have to document, as Dr. Himanshu rightly said, that we have to document the audit procedures performed. So that is what external confirmation also comes into picture. So first of all, we need to understand that as an auditor, what is the one thing that is primarily required, right? And the primary thing is that the auditor needs to be independent. And in that independence criteria is where the external confirmation comes into play, right? So external confirmation. So what I'll do is that I'll try to explain what is external confirmation, and since it is basically for our esteemed members in the industry, what is the external confirmation? What are the expectations of the auditor? And what are the expectations of the auditor from the industry and the industry from the auditor, and then going about it. So external confirmation means the audit evidence obtained as a direct written response to the auditor from a third party in paper form, electronic, or any other medium. So essentially, as a point of independence, the external confirmation, the auditor would have a direct point of contact with the external entity, which is, let's call it the responding entity. And for the confirmation of the balances which are there in the books of the reporting entity, which is the company, which is the client from the audit perspective, right? And getting a direct confirmation from the reporting entity would amount to a better external confirmation in that sense. Now, why would external confirmation be needed? So first of all, we need to understand what are the auditor's requirement, what are the guidelines, the regulatory guidelines on the auditor as far as the external confirmation is needed. Obviously, we've got the standards of audit as SA 505, which is the external confirmations, which is the auditor's use of external confirmation procedures to obtain audit evidence. That's one. But where does it emanate from? So essentially, it emanates from SA 330, right? Where what are the auditor's responses to the assessed risks? So when the audit is being conducted, the audit is to be conducted in two parts, whereas substantive audit procedures are to be applied and analytical audit procedures are to be applied. Substantive, as the name suggests, is more substantive, more in-depth analysis. And it is for that reason that external confirmations, even the regulator considers external confirmations to be of that priority that has been included in the substantive audit procedures. So it is up to the auditor to include that in the substantive audit procedure, and the mandate is given by SA 330, right? Then the SA 500, which we've been talking about, audit evidence, and then again the independence comes into picture, where three basic aspects are needed for an audit evidence to be reliable. Right? First is that it needs to be obtained from an outside entity, catering to the independence criteria, then obtained directly from them, and in documentary form. Now, all these three things are cumulatively affected in an external confirmation. Then you go into the SA 240, which is another important aspect where the auditor's responsibilities in relation to fraud and audit of financial statement. Then, while assessing the risk of material misstatement, while designing the confirmation request, also the risks of the material misstatement needs to be evaluated and designed. The external confirmation need to be designed accordingly. Next slide, Dr. Manshu, please. So that was basically the regulatory aspect of it. But let's consider what are the kinds of external confirmation. It's not just one particular confirmation, but there are basically two kinds. One is the positive confirmation and the other is a negative confirmation. Right? Positive confirmation, where a request that has been generated from the auditor to the confirming party, that whether they agree or disagree with the information which is there in the request. So they have to respond. The confirming party has to respond even if they don't agree with that information. So whether they agree or even if they disagree, they have to respond, right? And then you get the negative confirmation. Negative confirmation, on the other hand, says that the request is to be generated, where if the party disagrees, only then they'll respond. So you see the stark difference as far as the positive and the negative confirmation is there, that negative confirmation emanates lesser persuasive evidence as compared to a positive confirmation. So why would anyone go in for a negative confirmation? negative confirmation, as per the standard and as per the practical scenarios also, there are basically four aspects why an auditor might go in for a negative confirmation, where first you have the risk of material misstatement is very low. The balances with which you want to confirm are comparatively smaller and large in quantity and with like homogeneous in nature. And the rate of variance is very low. And there is no other risk which the auditor perceives from those class of transactions. So when all of these four classes are there, four conditions are there, they might go in for a negative confirmation. And even if one is there, the auditor still might go in for a negative confirmation. However, that has to be accompanied by other substantive procedures. So, rather than going through all that process and then going through other audit procedures in any case, it's better to go in for a positive confirmation, which also results in a better persuasive evidence. The only risk is that there might be low response rate, and for that, follow up would be needed. And when we talk about follow up, now is where the industry's point comes into picture. So while the companies are prepared in making the financial statements and preparing the balances, they do lag behind in giving that assistance to the auditor at the time of the audit in terms of the external confirmations. So that is one aspect. Now, how can we counter that? A best practice in this case would be for the auditee or for the company to actually start the confirmations earlier as soon as the financial year ends, right? So this is one of the best practice wherein the financial year ends on 31st of March. You've got April, May, and in fact, this is the high time when the audit generally starts in case of a larger corporations, and then you've got the medium and the smaller corporations for whom audit starts at a later stage. It is in this April and May period where you've got your information compiled and the audit is yet to begin on the field. So when the audit is yet to begin on the field, before that, the audit planning stage comes up, and that is generally there. And the selection of the samples to whom the circularizations is to be sent. See, one thing is for sure that, and the industry also needs understands this, that the circularizations are to be sent, or the external confirmations are actually to be sent by the auditor. They have to select the samples, right? So when they have to select the samples, then how can we assist them in doing that? Or how are we, because we're not going to select that. So in order for the audit to actually complete in a timely manner, there is a lot of assistance which is required from the auditee also. So what they can do is that they can complete the accounts and send the dump and the ledgers to the audit team right before the audit starts. And then the auditor can do their own sampling, their own monetary unit sampling and all that, and give out the samples and give them back to the auditee. Right? And they can do that. There is an issue in that the auditor might not send out the samples on time. So in order to be proactive, what the industry can do is that they can go into the prior period audit, and because that's all recorded, and take out the samples, and obviously after discussion with the auditor, take out the samples on the prior period audit, and because they're ongoing parties, so they can send those confirmations again to those parties which they had sent earlier as well. And that can happen after you've discussed it with the partner, with the engagement partner, with the engagement auditor, right? So see, one thing needs to be understood, that there is a lot of importance of external communication, external confirmation, and it is not merely a documentation process, but with the client's assistance in circularization can actually mitigate the risk of material misstatement, which otherwise might increase. So even the auditor understands that if there is a proactive engagement by the client, the risk of material misstatement automatically, it sort of gets tweaked a little down. And as there's this old adage that auditor is a watchdog, not a bloodhound. Yes, it is true. If there is transparency in the operations, if there's availability in the data, if there is no limitation to the auditor in performing his duties, there is no reason for the auditor to tend towards being a bloodhound. So, and assistance in terms of external circularizations also plays a big role in projecting the entity's transparency. Next slide, sir. So, in order to do that, now that you understand the importance of external confirmation and how the auditee can actually assist in doing that, let's go to the process. Now, the process, the first thing is that, and this is also a very big misnomer among the auditee and the auditor communication, that when you're going in for an external confirmation, you just have to go in for and check the account balances. You have to check the account balances of the vendors of the of different customers. It's not just about that. And I can give you personal examples of various industries where we've not just done the account balance checking, but also there are terms of contracts that needs to be confirmed, terms of agreements that need to be confirmed, right? So, for example, in one of the clients had a long-term borrowings which have been outstanding for a long time, and there was no follow-up document, a revised follow-up document to cater to that. So we went in for a circularization and with the bank about the revised rate, whether there has been any rate revision, whether there has been any revision of the term of the loan, and whether there has been any revised agreement. So those things can also be done, and that thing can be done with the financial institutions and the customers and the clients also. Confirmation of side agreements. Now, this is a case in case of a pharma industry. We went to the management, and there was one of the a vendor who was a large vendor, and we wanted to do external confirmation for that, and there was a management refusal for us to do that. And upon digging deeper, we actually found that there were side agreements, and because of those side agreements, which were not disclosed in the financial statements, the amount which was disclosed got reduced drastically. So, and then ultimately we had to assess the fraud risk factors and qualify the report. And one of the reasons for qualifying the report was also this. So, all these things might be asked by the auditor from the auditee. So the auditee also has to be prepared and has to be genuine in terms of providing that information. Selecting appropriate parties. So that's what we discussed earlier also, that for the client to be proactive and engage with the auditor even before the audit starts, so as to evaluate what are the samples and what to whom the circularizations are to be sent, so that that process gets initiated before this audit starts, and helps in the smooth railing of the audit process. Designing confirmation requests. Now, this is also very important because essentially the response rate would depend upon how the requests have been designed. What are the assertions which have been addressed? What is the layout in the presentation? There have been a lot of cases where a simple, the client says or the industry says that this is a simple email verification which has come out from the vendor. It has to be in a proper layout. The wordings have to be discussed with the management. The wording has to be discussed with the auditor, and response has to be received accordingly. What has been the prior experience with the auditor, accompanied by management authorization? Many a times, the vendors or the other third parties, they're not very willing, or they might not respond to an individual request of the auditor for a circularization. Because, see, as I said, this is a one-on-one communication between the auditor and the responding party. So when it is a one-on-one communication, the many a times that responding party might require or might be more comfortable in disclosing any information when the management authorization is there. So it is always better to have a management authorization whenever the auditor wants. And then comparing the results of the balances from the confirmation received. If there is any, I consider that to be a very good control mechanism also as far as the auditee is concerned. Because if, as on 31st of March, right, even if it's just the checking of the account balances, as of 31st of March, if there is any discrepancy in the account balance, you can iron that out as quickly as possible, rather than waiting for the audit to conclude and then going in for that extended period. So ironing out those things, and we should actually prevent the entity from going into any further litigation also. And then follow-up requests on the part of the auditor also, and on the part of the auditee as well. Next slide, sir, please. Yeah. One of the basic issues which is found practically and also is being addressed by the standard is what if there is a management refusal, right? And this I'm talking from the auditor's perspective, and then we'd be discussing the auditee's perspective as well. From the auditor's perspective, if there is a refusal in the management by the management to get the circularization, what would we do? The first thing, obviously, is inquire into the management's reasons for refusal. If those reasons are actually reasonable, then further proceedings might be initiated. He'll seek certain audit evidence for that. He'll evaluate the implications of the management's refusal on the auditor's assessment, whether he needs to revise the risk of material misstatement as he had assessed as per SA 315, whether those assessments need to be revised, whether there are any fraud risk factors also, whether there are management override of controls which are incorporated. So all these things need to be checked. Perform alternative audit procedures and assess fraud risk factors, right? So it is not just the management refusal might also lead to the auditor's understanding of the entire risk procedure, which was analyzed at the planning stage. Now, what would be the approach of the auditee? First of all, it's a very common thing for a management refusal. You need to document those reasons carefully. Be specific and genuine, right? If there is a reason, if there has to be a proper reason for the management to refuse that, whether there is an ongoing legal dispute, whether data privacy concerns are there, the company might enter into an agreement with any other vendor for or any other third party for a possible merger in the future. So there are price sensitive informations being done, and on a test basis, there might be some transactions also for which there are data privacy concerns, and validly so. Legal disputes, in terms of legal disputes, there might be some situations where the auditee might risk that if certain external confirmations are being sent by the auditor to the legal party, the legal dispute might get some traction. So these are also very common issues. So the basic guidance to the auditee is to avoid vague and generic terms like not comfortable or like it's an internal policy and might have legal repercussions and all that. So all these words should be avoided. Provide valid supporting evidence. If there is a legal dispute, provide a legal notice. If there is a data privacy concern, get into a confidentiality clause and include that. Include that with the management representation letter also, justifying any sort of refusal. See, the basic idea is to have a reasonableness for the management refusal and to get and the auditor is also, he'll also understand if there are sufficient reasons for the management refusal, right? Allow escalation where needed. Now, this is one aspect where there is a lot of like disputes or issues with the auditee, that they sort of take it on an adversarial note. See, all these things that we discussed over here as the management refusal, from the auditor's perspective, these are all standard guidelines which the auditor in any case has to follow, right? Whether it is going and assessing the fraud risk factors, whether it is assessing the risk of material, reassessing the risk of material misstatement, and all those things. So don't consider those as an adversarial issues. Understand that the auditor he might revise the risk assessment. He'll also communicate with those charged with the governance and the management. And there are issues that he might also modify the opinion. So don't view that escalation in a negative sense. So that's my suggestion. Next slide, sir. Dr. Manshu, next slide, please. That's it. So the basic idea is to, as Dr. Manshu said, work which is not documented is work not done. And consider external confirmations as a part of the substantive analytical procedures. Understand the importance since the regulators, the frameworks do. It is only better for the auditee also to understand the importance of it. And from a control perspective also, it is much better for them. That was my time. Right.
So, yeah, sir, I have a question.
No questions, yeah.
How can we improve communication between our company's finance team and the auditors to ensure a smooth and efficient audit process particularly concerning the provision of necessary documentation.
Okay. Dr. Manchu, would you take that or should I? Okay.
Sir,
Okay.
you are not audible. Himanshu, sir, you are not.
Anirudh, you can take this. I will support you. Mhm.
Okay. So the basic idea over here is to how to get a proper communication between the auditor and the auditee, right? The finance team and the auditor. So that proper communication starts at the planning stage. Do a pre-audit meeting, kick off the audit before that and get a proper meeting for that. And iron out any differences which might arise in the future, including either it is external confirmation, either it is whatever were the issues which are identified previously in the previous audits. Those can be understood. So I think the basic understanding is to have an understanding of each other's expectations.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to add here, like if we are talking about the coordination between the auditor and auditor, right? So first, the company and the auditor should define the point of the contact. Like who is the point of the contact from the company side as well as the auditor sides to avoid any confusion and miscommunication, right? And define the clear responsibility. The company should define the clear responsibility, like if they are, the 10 people are in the team. So who is responsible for that area and who provide the audit working files to the auditor for the particular area, and also do the before starting. It is very mandatory. It is a very mandatory, or if I read the essay, is they required to do the kickoff meeting between the company official as well as the auditor to discuss the expectation, timeline, objective, and also do the regular progress meeting where we are, or and the timeline should be fixed in advance to maintain the discipline and take some buffer time also. And at the end of the audit, do the closing meeting and take the necessary improvement point for that. And regarding the coordination, I have already discussed when we discuss about the shared document platform. Like the company should maintain the one platform where all the document can be shared and viewed by the auditee as well as the auditor, to avoid any confusion that this data has been received or this data has not been received, and who provide or when provide. Neha, any question from the audience sides?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah,
Can you
it's from
take
the
the question
audience.
from the
only.
audience?
Yeah,
Every question is from the audience only.
every question is from the audience. Sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is. So we have a question. It is difficult to obtain debtors and creditors confirmation from foreign parties and unregistered supplier. So how can we handle such situation?
So I think that question is directed to me, right? So I would say that first we need to understand the reasons why there is no confirmation. There are issues where there are unregistered parties, there are small micro parties with whom there are large number of transactions. So in case of large number of transactions with them, it's obvious for the auditor also to get a confirmation. And despite follow-up, 3 follow-up, 4 follow-up requests, the confirmations are not received. So then we'll have to go in for alternate audit procedures, right? And those alternate, what would be the alternate audit procedures? So alternate audit procedures would be to, first of all, say it is for checking with the balances, then going with the cutoff dates, whether there has been any, what is the reason for them not responding, or whether they've responded the responded incorrectly, or there are any differences. So those things need to be need to be considered. So first things would be the cutoff dates, whether there has been any delivery which is yet pending and has been entered in the books of accounts, which has not been entered in the other person's books of accounts. That could be one of the reasons for any discrepancy. And the other audit procedures would be to look at the class of transactions and where does it impact the materiality of the company. If that materiality does affect, then I would suggest that take a management representation letter with that regard, or at least get on a call with the responding parties, right? Because there is no reason for any person, fine, they might not want to disclose that formally on a document, but there's no reason for them not to do that. If they're actually genuine, they'd want to do that, right? It's just them, us pestering them to do that. In there might be a situation where, because of the audit season, they might be busy with their own work, then they're not responding to it. So I would say that get on a call with them, and if that is also not sufficing, then you might even want to consider other fraud risk factors, and if there are those are actually real vendors or not. So those things can come in the mind of the auditor. Dr. Manju, would you like to elaborate on that? You're on mute.
It's okay. You have already elaborated that.
So we have one more question. What role does internal audit play in ensuring the adequacy and accuracy of documentation provided to external auditor? And how can we strengthen this function within our organization?
Okay.
Dr. Manju, would you?
Yeah. If we talk about the internal audit help by the company while performing the statutory audit, which is the question I can understand. So, if internal audit plays a very significant role for the adequacy and the accuracy of the documentation provided by the company to the external auditor. Like internal auditor can assess the adequacy of the documentation practice within the organization, ensuring that policy and procedure are in place to support accurate record keeping. And also, he can perform the compliance check that the financial statement has been prepared according to the accounting standard, according to the generally accepted accounting procedure or not, or complies with the law and regulation. Also, internal auditor can identify the issue in the working prepared by the management before giving to the external auditor, and in a year to year basis they can develop some guideline how to prepare working files for the auditor and ensure the compliance of the requirement. And if we talk about the enhancing of the internal audit function, so that's always like implement the technology solution, establishment clear policies, and training procedure, and giving the advance deadline also in the scope to the internal auditor for the particular year. Anirudh, you want to add something here?
No, sir. I think you've elaborated quite well. It's not really,
So-
internal audit is not really my field, but so I think I'll leave it to you, the expert on that.
So we have one more question. What if third party gives oral confirmation? Can it be relied on?
No, ma'am. Yeah, that can't be done because that has been the case in some of the clients, but proper documentation. See, the three things that we mentioned, even in SA 500 or in SA 505, right? The third thing was actually proper documentation in terms of written form, right? Written might be on paper, written might be in a digital form. In fact, we go to the extent of, if it is in a digital form, to get it digitally signed, to get a DSC also in some cases. So oral documentation would certainly not suffice. And yeah.
We have already discussed while discussing the audit documentation. The oral confirmation you cannot document. You cannot document, or you cannot prove in front of any regulator or in a court of law. So it is kind of, you have not done anything.
Not right.
So are there any steps which we need to take to facilitate the process of external confirmation?
So the process, as we mentioned, right, in the sheet, if you look back, and so you've got the entire process. So in short, the process would first start with what you want to get confirmed, right? Whether those are account balances, whether those are terms of contracts, terms of agreements, whether those are additional things which you risk might be included, like a side agreement, like all those things. Then secondly, to whom to send those confirmations. Then again, then you've got the sampling techniques with the auditor and all. And so an effective communication with by the auditee and the auditor in order to understand to whom the circulations are to be sent. That is the second step. And then the third step is that whatever responses they receive, they get, checking those responses against the balances that they have in your own, that or the facts or the information that you have in your own books. If there is any discrepancy, then you get those discrepancies, you go to the reasons of why those discrepancies are there and get them rectified. Fourth issue is that if you don't get any response, now if you don't get any response, then you send second, third, fourth reminders, up to 3 reminders. And even if then they don't respond, then you go in for other analytical procedures, other substantive procedures, including the test of details and all that. And even further, if that doesn't happen, then you assess the fraud risk factors, assess the risk of material misstatement. And that's the same case in case of management's refusal to do that also. So that's the gist of the steps to be involved.
When it is acceptable to rely on negative confirmations?
So it is, as I mentioned, that it can be relied, provided there are 4 things which needs to be make sure. First, that the risk of material misstatement is very low. See, first we need to understand negative confirmation is an option which is given in the standard also to facilitate the audit process, where those transactions are comparatively small and large in number and of the similar nature. Like in case of a retail shop, right? You've got n number of transactions which are smaller in size, and you can't go in for an external confirmation of each and every party. That party might be coming to that retail store a number of times. And third point is that there is little discrepancy. And the fourth point that the auditor does not consider any other risk factors which are there. So when all the 4 factors are considered, then you can go in for negative confirmation without going in for any other audit procedures. If any of these factors are not present, you can still go in for the negative confirmation, but you'll have to support that with the other audit evidence, other substantive procedures. Yeah.
So can we choose to not to send confirmation to some parties whom we know they will not respond?
So I'm assuming the question is coming from the auditee's side, right? So no, I mean, the decision to whether to send a communication to a particular party would completely reside on the auditor. So the auditee does not have the say in saying that which parties do you send to and which parties do you not. So it is the auditor's call.
If auditor refuse, then auditor need to document the reason for the refusal and perform the alternative procedure over there.
Right.
So it was a very nice session, Himanshu and Anirudh sir. So we don't have any further questions. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marti.
Have a good evening. Have a good